Okay, well, tonight, what we're going to look at is a book by Ramesh Balsekar. It's called Who Cares? And before I start reading, I'm just going to read a few pages and then, of course, we will discuss. I just want to read here Balsekar's definition of God, because he uses the word God very often. So we need to get clear what he means by it. This word or concept is frequently used by Ramesh to indicate or refer to that which cannot be conceived and thus is beyond mind intellect. God is not an object or an entity and has no qualities. That which is beyond mind and consequently cannot be conceived is referred to as God, or any number of references such as consciousness, source, noumenon, reality, Tao, potential, subject, absolute, primal energy, or whatever concept. The teaching as it happens through Ramesh is not theistic. In theism, God is an object and an entity with qualities such as omnipresence, omnipotence, and all merciful. So obviously, when you're going to hear the word God, it's
not a theistic vision.
That's right. Thank you. He also used the word happens, and this indicates an occurrence without any doer doing anything. Happens is spontaneous and without intention or volition. Although there usually appears to be a chain of events, cause and effect, which leads to something that just happens. The meaning of this word is best conveyed by two examples. The teaching happens through Ramesh. In other words, there is no one who does anything. The teaching, happens. There is no seeker. The seeking is just happening. And then he uses functioning. Consciousness is all there is. There is no doer, no seeker, no decision maker, no lover, but there is doing, there is seeking, there is deciding, there is loving. Functioning is the impersonal movement of consciousness in action. That gives the manifestation the appearance of being real. For example, the ego, the sense of personal doership, interprets as its functioning, that which is always and can only be the impersonal functioning of consciousness through a body-mind organism. So functioning is consciousness functioning. It's impersonal. We make it personal as soon as we identify that consciousness as a me. So now, this is Ramesh, and this is his teaching right here. Life will indeed become simpler without the monkey mind. The monkey mind is that mind that jumps around, chatters constantly. So what you want turned off is not the mind as such, but the monkey mind. For this reason, I have a concept which says there are two aspects to the mind. One is the monkey mind, the thinking mind, the mind which asks questions and provides answers and asks further questions of those answers and goes on and on and on. That is the monkey mind, or what I call the thinking mind. There is another aspect of the mind I call the working mind. It is the working mind that is necessary for, and now he's referring to a questioner whose name is Freddie. So the working mind is necessary for Freddie to live his life. The working mind is only focused with doing what needs to be done at the moment in the circumstances. It is not concerned, not even with whether the work that is being done is necessary or not, nor is it concerned with the consequences. It is only focused on doing the job that is being done, and it is not concerned with who is doing the job. That's the working mind. It's in the present moment. It's not projecting into the past, and it's not holding on to the past, and it is not projecting into the future. It is centered in the now, doing what has to be done now. It is the thinking mind which says, I am doing this work, and I must find out what the consequences are going to be. So the thinking mind always thinks about the future. The working mind is not concerned with the future. Why is the working mind not concerned with the future? Because the one who is concerned with the consequences of the future is the ego, the thinking mind. In the working mind, there is no individual, no ego who does the work. So in the working mind, if there is no individual doing the work, then who is to worry about the consequences? In the working mind, there is no individual worker. The work is just being done. The individual doer is the thinking mind, wanting to know, after the work is done, what's going to happen to me? The me is the thinking mind, the ego. The ego, according to my concept, is the identification with the name and form as an individual with the sense of doership. Whatever happens to this body, I am doing it, and I am the one who's going to suffer the consequences. So now, who has come to this conclusion? Ramesh says, the one who has come to this conclusion in the beginning is the ego, the one who thought he was the doer. Gradually, what will happen is that the I, the ego, which came to the conclusion that he doesn't exist, will then over a period of time find more and more from personal experience that he does nothing. So first, there has to be a discovery by a personal experience, a direct experience, that this me who feels so real and feels like it's always wanting to be in control and always needing to be safe, that me, it's then discovered, does not really have an independent existence separate from thought and me thinking. Once that's discovered, then there's no problem anymore with, am I the doer, am I not the doer? There is no longer a doer. There is only, as he says, doing. And yeah, there's doing. Work has to be done. Houses have to be cleaned. Children have to be taken to school. There is doing, but not by an individual me. It's consciousness, impersonal consciousness functioning through each of us. So now someone named Shen says, but sometimes it's necessary to see ahead. Yes, says Ramesh. You mean you have to plan things, of course. Suppose the sage has to catch a plane at midnight. He will plan when it is best to leave for the airport, when to have dinner prior to leaving, when to arrange for the car. All this is the planning of the working mind. It is not the thinking mind. But the thinking mind is there in the case of the ordinary person doing the same planning. Where is the difference? The ordinary person says, I've done this planning, but suppose the taxi has a flat tire. Suppose I'm not able to reach there. Suppose the plane doesn't leave on time. Suppose the plane crashes. All that is the thinking mind, which doesn't happen in the case of the sage. He does what is supposed to be done and knows that whatever happens in the future is not in his control. So he doesn't worry about it. He doesn't think about it. That doesn't mean he doesn't plan. That doesn't mean we don't plan ahead for things. But planning for something is different than projecting the what ifs into the plan we've made. So, this person says, I don't really have any questions. I have curiosity. I suppose I just have curiosity. I don't have any burning questions. Ramesh says, curiosity is the thinking mind. Thinking mind asks a question. Thinking mind provides an answer. Then the thinking mind provides further questions based on the answer. And then more questions and more answers. The sage considers the consequences in making a judgment, in making a plan. The flight may be missed, regardless of the working mind, what the working mind's planning. The sage is not concerned with the consequences of missing the flight. That is why the Sufi says, trust in God, but tie up your camel. It is the working mind that ties up the camel and make sure that the rope is properly tied. After that, it is the thinking mind that comes in and is concerned with what happens if somebody steals the camel. So I think that it's very interesting to see in our daily life, in our daily interactions, when does this thinking mind, or the worry mind, or the ego mind, or the me thinking mind, when does it come up? How does it come up? And how does it influence our behavior? How does it influence what we're feeling about others and about ourselves? And when are we in this working mind, in the present moment, doing what needs to be done, and feeling free, and feeling stressless? Because when there is no me thinking, then what we have to do is stressless. It's just practical. It's a matter of doing. It's when that thinking, me thinking, ego thinking mind comes in and starts projecting into the future or dwelling in the past, that it creates stress and fear and uncertainty and insecurity. And that's what Ramesh is trying to say here, or has said. I know he said that it's the thinking mind that asks the questions, but for now, in this stage of our exploration, questions are important.
I think there's a component that it just screams out at me as you're talking, because he's very much along the lines of J.K.'s thinking and explanation.
Mm-hmm.
But the word is conditioning. And from the time we're born, we're conditioned to think. How many times have every one of us as little boys and girls been yelled at by our parents? Think before you do something. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And this and that, and being chastised for not thinking. So that as you grow up and you start to learn, and you fortunately stumble into this non-duality stuff, you begin to learn just how deadly thinking is, because it's a product of thought. And what's thought? It's a product of memory. And how does memory get accumulated? And so you're relying on, so when you get an understanding of that, you're relying on something that's not necessarily true. Your memory, the way we record, most of us, is at best partial.
Mm-hmm.
And in most instances, it's contaminated by the pre-programming that we've had, so that we see, depending on where you're from, race is a great way of finding out your biases. Okay, it pops in and you don't know it. Why? Well, you've been brought up, and so that's something that I struggle with, to try to see that, because during the day, okay, this, that, the other, that thinking mind is running all the time. And I know when it's running, it's in two places, either in the past or in the future.
Right.
And the way that what helps me is to realize, stupid, you're driving a car, your hands are on a steering wheel, and you're driving the car, and you're listening to the radio, and you're not seeing what's going around. That's what's happening. And I like the way this guy, by the way, how do you spell his last name?
Yeah, one Balsekar.
Seaar,
No, Balsekar.
right? Right. K.
Mhm.
Okay, AR, great. I perfectly agree with him.
So Ugo, you're just pointing out how addicted we all are to the thinking mind.
Yep.
That's the present state of humanity.
Yes.
That's the present state of our individuality. Our identity is tied up with the thinking mind. And you're right, as soon as we get out of bed, it starts churning.
Yep.
The only thing that we can do, having had this knowledge imparted to us, is to try and glimpse it as it works.
Yep. Yeah. I think the thing that helps me too is that constantly realizing that my projecting, which is where you spend a lot of time projecting a what if and what's going to happen and this, that, and the other thing. But at some point, it becomes really clear to me that, like this guy says, you don't know what's going to happen. And because you don't know, you can't do anything about it. You just don't know. So why worry about it? Oh, I'm going to die. Well, you're alive now. Why don't you live until you die?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it sounds so simplistic, but it works. I mean, I've been through some physical, personal things, and to worry about the outcome is to lose sight of the fact that the outcome isn't here. What's here? Well, whatever is here. I'm hurting this, I'm hurting that. This, take a pill for this, go to the doctor for that, do what you can, and then the hell with it. Eat chocolate cake. I mean, it sounds so simplistic, but boy, if I had this knowledge 30, 40 years ago.
Well, listen, so I can imagine a dialogue. So you're telling me, and I see it's a fact, that the thinking mind runs my life.
Yes.
And you're telling me to step away from the thinking mind. Well, right now, the thinking mind runs my life. So if I disengage from the thinking mind, what's going to organize and run my life?
Well, first of all,
Well, your life is organized whether you like it or not. You don't have to think. Thinking doesn't interfere with your living. You're living, you're doing a living, and you're superimposing thinking on what's going on. But the day to day, the moment by moment things that are happening have nothing to do with thought. That's why they're stressless. Because if you're in the moment, you're in the moment. You can't be thinking about it. You're doing it.
right. That's
And that's the thing. We're taught by religion, by all the rest of the thing, that you got to worry about this thing, that you have to think about it, that you got to plan, that you got to do all these things. God forbid you should step out the door without having all your thoughts lined up of what you're going to do for today. Think of all the people that make lists. They get up in the morning and they make, I have friends of mine that you go in their house and they got lists all over the place.
Oh, wait a minute now. What's wrong with making lists?
Well, what's wrong with making lists? Well, you're trying to conform what you're doing to something that hasn't happened yet, and by just something comes up, you don't control life. So you're on your way. You're going to go do your shopping. The phone rings and somebody calls up. He's got a bad problem. You got to sit there and you got to talk to him. You don't enjoy the conversation because you're trying to figure out a nice way of getting rid of him or her. and doing
Yeah.
something else.
But you see, but again, planning, we're not saying we don't plan.
No.
So if I know I have to go shopping, I am going to make a shopping list, right?
Right.
Right. What we're talking about is, so that would be, according to his example, the working mind, the mind that knows the cupboard is bare, I've got to go shopping and I need a list so that I remember what I have to buy.
Let's put it this way. The difference, I mean, by listening to it, you can make your lists, but you're not a slave to it. That's what you want to do. But when it doesn't happen, you don't get all upset and you don't get all knocked out of it.
Of course.
Because you realize this is what I would like to have happen. But you realize that the clouds don't arrange themselves according to what you want. They arrange themselves by a lot of other stuff. And, you know, you wanted to go out and plant the flowers today, but it's raining. So you do it tomorrow. What's the big deal? I think
Right.
that's the big difference, is that the listing and the planning and all of that, it's much more than just planning. It's saying this is the way it has to be.
Well,
And then
yes.
when it doesn't get that, when it doesn't work out that way, that's when you start the suffering. Therefore, the non-duality comes in and says, wait a minute, who is it that's suffering? It's the guy that's thinking. And who is the guy that's thinking? It's a bunch of thoughts. Where are these thoughts? Well, they're ideas. But all of this is happening to a mind and to a brain, to an individual, that it's a product of thought. It's just an idea.
Right. Right.
It's
Well,
powerful, very powerful stuff.
Yeah. And it takes a trust, I think, also. You know, it's almost like if I'm sitting here driving my wagon, I have the reins in my hand of my wagon, and someone says, let go of the reins. Everything is going to unfold just the way it's supposed to unfold. Trust that consciousness functions.
I'll keep my hands on the
Yeah.
rein.
But yes, consciousness functions, but I don't step in front of a bus.
No, I'm not. No. But in life in general, there he's saying your life will unfold
Yes.
in the way it, I don't want to say supposed to unfold, but life will unfold as consciousness is unfolding through you.
Well, that's the point when he said you are not the doer. It's impersonal consciousness working through you or streaming through you. And we, because we have so identified with a permanent entity called me, we're frightened and we feel we have to be in control in order to be safe. And he's saying that's not the way it works. It's almost counterintuitive.
It is.
It's like when there is no me, you are safer because then the functioning is stressless.
You're responding to the now.
You're responding to the now, and you're fully present, and you're alert.
Hold on, but
And
what
you
about
can
when
see
somebody?
more
Yeah,
clearly.
so hold on. So what do you mean consciousness is going to stream through me? So what? How do I know what consciousness has in store for me? That sounds very.
But that's the me again. We don't know. None of us can know
Right.
what the next minute is going to bring. But we try and fight life. We try and mold life, as Ugo said, according to how we think it should be. And it just, sometimes maybe it works, but most of the times it doesn't. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be alert and aware and be able to read the book of life and the book of yourself. Know what's going on inside of you. Know what's going on outside of you through awareness. And then there's more clarity. And when there is clarity, there is right action.
So, it's interesting. I would still probably do all the things that I do now with the thinking mind. I would probably still do all the things, all the activities that I do now with the thinking mind, only I would do them with a working mind head, so to speak.
Yes,
Right,
that's right.
right. So
There's no projection that what the thinking mind is doing has to
Right.
be. You allow it, you accept that it doesn't happen at times.
Mhm.
I think it's the way you accept. At least I've gotten to the stage where, to me, I accept that my thinking mind does not function properly, and I don't get destroyed anymore. I don't suffer. I don't go through the anxiety and the regret and the anger when I don't know, the paint didn't dry on the boat. Shit, now I got to go take it off, and that's a big. Okay, here we go through the drama. So what do? Well, let's try having a cup of coffee. And what's the big deal? So you take the paint off and you put it back on. I mean, I don't have an appointment with Gina Lollobrigida or some other acting star. I mean, that's what I like to do. And it's just incredible if you just give yourself some space to just be. The hell with all these ideas that you get. I mean, I've spent a lifetime building up who I should be, and nobody's listening.
Mhm.
It's an idea that's been handed to me. My environment has dictated it to me. From the day I can remember, 2 or 3 years old, being in Piedmont, Italy, and some of the value judgments that I got there. It's a sin to throw food away, even though it was bad. You still ate it. Values that are still part of me, but now I can see it and see what they do, and I can see that the annoyance comes from me. I make my annoyance. I get angry. I get anxious. It's not the world out there that's doing it. It's me. The world out there could care less. There's a rabbit in the backyard eating grass. He could care less of what I think or how I feel or anything else. He's eating the grass.
Right. He's in the now.
That's the only place he can be. He hasn't read any books. He hasn't had bad mommy and daddies.
Right. Yes. Well, yeah. So as you said, Ugo, the awareness of
Well, the other thing too is that, the folks that don't have haven't spent a little bit of time with this, you've got to give yourself some space. It took me a couple of years to get into this non-duality thing, this Buddhist non-duality thing. And at some point, it really started to penetrate when Wheeler kept asking me, well, who are you and what are you?
Right.
And it took me a long time to realize that I wasn't what I thought I was. And that was very hard for me to even allow me to think that I may be wrong. I might not be what I think I am. And, and that was the big step for me. And then the other big step was finally accepting that there is this thing of present awareness, and that's what everything is. There's like a universal consciousness, or however you want to describe it.
yeah.
And that's the key, because that consciousness has no value. It has no judgment. It just sees what is, the way it is.
And that's what's happening when we're in the working mind.
That's right.
Because that consciousness is not an object. It's what we are.
Yeah. We see, we naturally, without any thinking, we naturally respond to our senses. But we've been brought up to interpret those senses through a separation of the thing that's doing the actual sensing and attributing it to the observer. And the minute you got an observer, you got that ego building up. And the observer's got to process through things. And the observer doesn't necessarily count on the moment, being in the moment. It relies on memory.
Yeah.
And
You
is the thought process.
I guess the idea that's so prevalent around is mindfulness. The idea of mindfulness, it's given a new meaning now. If you think of it in terms of being mindful where you're at, either in the thinking mind or the working mind. That's where the mindfulness can pay off. Mindful of what? Mindful of whether I'm operating from my thinking mind in places where it needn't be, or am I in the working mind? It's a good way to sharpen the idea of a mindfulness. Being mindful, going through the day with a mindful attitude.
And that's awareness.
Right.
That's awareness.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of awareness.
And that's the awareness that's used when you become aware that there's the chatter going on here.
Yeah.
The minute you're in chattering, you're in thinking there, then I think you can temper it if you're aware of it, that you're doing it and realizing what that whole thinking, mind chattering process is.
Yeah, then you can pull the plug on it. Then the plug gets pulled on it, because the seeing is the doing. So the moment that there's a seeing, that we're caught in this thinking, chattering, worrying mind, the moment that's the seeing, you're out of it. That doesn't mean it's not going to come back. But
you put a pin in it.
Well,
yeah.
Put the pin in it.
Like you put a pin in it or pull the plug on it. It just happens the moment that there is a seeing.
Yep.
Seeing happens.
well, seeing happens. Couldn't you say that mindfulness sharpens your awareness or points your awareness back to your thinking mind?
Well, awareness is the spotlight.
Right.
Awareness is the spotlight of mindfulness.
Right.
There can't be mindfulness without awareness.
Right.
Awareness, consciousness.
Well, awareness is mindfulness, directs it. My awareness constantly is, but I'm oblivious to it when I'm locked in the thinking mind. The thinking mind distorts awareness, narrows it, right?
So awareness is what allows you to even know about the thinking mind. And that's
Right.
And there can't be anything without awareness.
Of course.
right.
Yeah, of course.
What I thought was interesting about this evening's reading was the idea that you often hear in non-duality that you don't exist, you don't make any decisions, you don't do anything. And he was much more like, well, yeah, there are certain things that you are in control of. There's the now, you're making decisions. That's not unreasonable or not real, that's happening. It's the things that you project and pretend that's the issue. I haven't heard it laid out that way before.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Sure. You're thinking about tomorrow. You're projecting, and it's you're creating. You're writing a book. You're writing fiction.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't exist tomorrow.
Or you're thinking about doing the dishes.
Pardon?
You know, I was thinking.
What's Dan saying?
When
You're
you,
thinking about doing the dishes. There's that level of thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking then when you were saying that there's that expression, before enlightenment, there's chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, there's chopping wood and carrying water. It's just doing it with a different mind. You're
It's
not
doing it without a me.
exactly without the thinking mind.
Yeah. Well, the thinking mind is trying to rate whether
Yeah.
the chopping the wood or carrying the water is good or it's bad, or whether
Exactly.
or whether maybe chopping the wood. I'd rather chop the wood than let somebody else carry the water, or maybe I'd rather carry water than chop the wood. So shut up and do both, and then you'll have some you'll have hot water in a hot house, you know. But it really is for me unbelievable how projecting, thinking about an outcome that the me, wants is destructive.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part about it is that at other times it's very pleasurable because it works and it's reinforced. But I think there's something there, I don't know how to express it, but you know, sometimes you got to give up something that's pleasurable so that you don't suffer the terrible things about suffering from things not coming true, or not being and not continuing, from the pleasure no longer continuing, and seeing that but the really pleasure and suffering, it's almost, it's a coin.
Yeah.
You know, it's one coin, and they're both, one's on one side, one's on the other side. So
Mhm.
maybe it's better not to use the coin. Go chop wood.
Ah. Well, yeah, that's the pleasure is what we pursue for happiness.
Yep. Desire and pleasure and all of that. That's what we're driven. That's what we're brought up. That's the goal. Be ambitious, be somebody, get ahead, you know, make money, all of the things that not necessarily self-serving as we've been taught. Because most of that, it ends up being what? In big capital letters, more. You can never get satisfied. You never have enough money. You never have enough chocolate cake. You never have enough ice cream. You never have enough women. Never have enough sex. Never have enough alcohol. On and on and on and on.
That's right, but that's always the me again.
That's it.
Always the me, wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel full. Because when I have power, when I have a wealth, when I have status, then I feel safe and I feel full. But
I
only for
have
a
control.
moment. Only for a moment.
I have control. When you that's you know, Musk and some of these other guys, they got billions. They got control. Sometimes it blows up though. But
Well, but that's another thing that awareness shines the spotlight on. Our motivations, what motivates us toward things. And are we seeing clearly what needs to be done and we're doing it? Or are we, again, projecting an image of what we should be and what it should come out as? That doesn't mean that if you want to pursue a career in something or want to volunteer for something, it doesn't mean that if something is calling you, that you don't answer that call. But are you answering it with the thinking, me thinking, worry mind? Or is the answer coming from the clear working mind, which is really the impersonal consciousness doing what needs to be done here, completing the task for you? Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you guys back again.
Same
Thank
here,
you.
same here.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are
Thank you.
so missed. It's unbelievable.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Good night. See you soon.
Buonasera a tutti, eh?
Buonasera.